No, we're all here.
I'm not sure. I'll
I
look
don't.
out.
Okay. Looks like we're streaming live now.
You're ready to go now. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, so we'll call the board work session for Wednesday, January 17th, 2024 to session in order, and I'll go ahead and read the mission statement, vision statement, and values. Educating each student to the highest standard while motivating them to reach their fullest potential and graduating them to be college, career, and life ready. Vision statement. Our schools are a place where children belong. Each student is known by name, strength, and need, and provided the education and opportunities to achieve success. Our values: striving for equity, inclusion, and belonging, celebrating diversity, engaging the community, supporting the whole child, promoting and achieving academic excellence. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Bernal.
All right. So I have a slide deck. Robin, are you going to bring that up or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can do it. Hold on.
Okay. So I just prepared a small slide deck. I've been sharing some information with you and asked you to review some of the information ahead of this session. So this is just kind of recapping some of the information that's already been shared with you all as we think about next steps in terms of a bond for May or not May. So Robin, you can skip to the next slide. So this is just a recap. Measure 33-109, that was our November 2023 bond. That was for the singular high school replacement bond. Our voter turnout, there was a total of 6,618 ballots that were cast out of 14,609 registered voters. So we had about a 45.3% turnout. And our yes votes were 47.44% and no was 52.56%. The precinct data was better than 2018. We actually won 3 precincts, and we also made significant improvements over the 2018 turnout. The overall strengths of our bond efforts, we had a robust district-led bond development process. We had a highly engaged PAC that got out early, and we made significant investment in communicating to families and the broader community about the bond and about the issues we face in terms of our school buildings. Areas for growth. With the vision, the community still had too many questions about the vision for the new high school, and there was confusion about why the bond would make investments in the existing high school as well. Costs was perceived as too expensive, and even though we had a good turnout, overall, the turnout among our key constituencies was below average. Next slide.
Carolyn, can you explain that key constituencies? When
we broke down like the voter age group, and when we took a look at who actually showed up to vote, I think our 20 to 50 range was pretty low. And it's hard to determine which of those had kids in our schools and which didn't. But that would have been one of the larger bases that was lower than anticipated.
And that's key for us because that 20 to 50 range is going to be the people most probably directly affected by a high school within the next few years.
Yeah, and I think, an assumption can be made for that age group that it's highly likely many of them have children and have children in our schools. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So moving forward, Stephanie and I, met several times with Jeremy from the Right Group post bond and just kind of talking about what could be some key recommendations for moving forward if we did decide to go back out in May. So one recommendation is to reduce the overall bond package and propose bringing down the total bond amount and the price per thousand. And this could potentially be achieved by, one idea is to leverage recent trends in cost reduction. One example was to learn from the Malala district, who was able to successfully lower their estimated cost of a proposed new middle school from 90 million to 71 million, by actually using actual bids on similar projects that are already in process out there. Another consideration is just to eliminate the extra specific projects. So, for example, consider removing the Watonka demo, expanded CTE space, and the current Dow's renovation, and remove that from the package. That would lower the overall cost. A second recommendation is to really create a vision and to address community concerns. Engage with an architecture firm to lead a community visioning process in the early spring. That could include like gallery walks for inspiration, brainstorming sessions, designing what it could look like, and more. And the goal really is to develop a vision that resonates with the community, and can be basically sold at the ballot. People will have more buy-in. Next slide.
Are you talking about the architectural look of and the interior look, or what are you talking about there?
Yeah, so doing like a gallery walk of existing high school projects, like if it is the desire to go back out to seek a singular high school bond, to do visioning sessions with the community, have a gallery walk where you have sample schools that have already been built in recent years, and or ones that are currently in progress, so the community could get more of a feel of what the high school could actually look like.
And does that include a discussion around what happens within the school, like a vision on the what the rooms are used for?
I don't think it goes into that granular of detail.
Okay.
No, it's more just the visioning of what it could potentially look like. I think one of the key feedbacks we received is that people didn't know what it was going to look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though we had a sample rendering, it wasn't what the actual high school was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And people seem to be very vested and interested in wanting to know what the actual project would look like, even though we can't promise that the end product will be that, right? So
yeah, I was thinking that would be an opportunity there, though, to show how a building would change because of safety concerns, like entrances, all of that kind of stuff, and actually have a whole section on that, because that's really important to the community.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide. So some of the requirements for success, if we were to go back out for May 2024, we would definitely need to identify new PAC leadership. We understand that our PAC leaders from the past PAC are stepping down, and we know that they put in a lot of work, and we're very grateful and thankful for that. So we would need to identify, or new leadership for the PAC would need to step up, and we'd need at least 3 leaders for the PAC that can ensure active involvement. The PAC would need to do some significant fundraising to identify and secure about $10,000 to support the campaign efforts. Board participation, we would need 2 or 3 board members to commit to actively participate in at least 3 Q&A town hall type meetings with the community. We would need the visioning session assistants, so at least 2 board members to commit to assisting the district in facilitating the visioning session that I just talked about. City engagement and connect with the city of the Dalles, regarding whether we could get some funding commitments for mock-ups or concept drawings. That conversation has come up in previous conversations. And then from the district perspective, our district leadership committing to engagement from staff and allocating funds for the paid communications. Any questions about just kind of next things that we would need to have in order? Slide. So other things for consideration, we did apply for the Awesome Grant funding. Unfortunately, which as you know, has increased to $6 million. Unfortunately, we were not awarded the Awesome Grant in this go around. We are second in line, so we are on a waiting list.
Mm,
There's two districts, so basically two other districts ahead of us either have to not move forward with their bond election in May, or their bond fails in May for us to be eligible for that $6 million. So if we were to move forward with a May bond, we would not be able to say that we have secured the Awesome Grant funding because we don't have it. We are on a wait list.
mm.
And then another thing for consideration is if we do want to move forward with a May election, we would need to start crafting ballot language pretty quick. That's due March 1st. And also in communicating with Piper Sandler, who helped us with our rates with the November election, they've communicated with us that interest rates have declined a bit. And if the board did decide to move forward and once an amount was decided on, they could rerun the rates to see what the rate reduction is.
So with the Awesome Grant, we had that on the first bond.
We
So
did.
that whole thing just disappear for us if we move forward at this time.
Yeah, so
Before
the grant
announced.
applications opened in December. We applied first thing and we were not awarded.
Mm.
So
Well,
we do not
to-
have
to-
that now.
to clarify, we're not guaranteed. So again, if you remember the grant, you have to pass your bond in order to receive the award.
Right.
So hypothetically, if those districts that are ahead of us fail their bond, then that frees up money within the fund. So right now, we're just not committed or confirmed the commitment. A couple things would have to kind of happen in order for us, to receive the monies, right? You'd have to have other districts fail or drop out because we're not past the deadline yet. And at the same time, we would have to, if we put something on the ballot, would have to pass it as well, right? So if there's just more layers to it than the November ballot measure.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Jose, for that.
Hi. Slide. So some things to consider as you're thinking about future forward. We could continue the path towards a high school replacement bond, which would be the singular high school replacement bond. We could consider the recommendations of reducing the overall cost and package. As part of that cost reduction, we could consider Watonka and refurbishing add-on versus tearing down that building as part of that package. Another option for consideration, and I shared information with you all earlier today from Kara Flath, our CFO, is to consider a smaller scale maintenance bond. This would be aimed at improvements at all sites. We have multiple existing things that need addressing at all of our schools. And so the focus of a smaller repair maintenance bond would be on things such as replacing windows, HVAC systems, pipe replacement, some of our roofs at the different school sites. This would benefit the aging facilities and the backlog of projects that are in dire need of completion to keep the buildings in good working order. And a smaller scale maintenance bond does touch all kids in all schools versus where the singular high school bond is just at the high school level. So that is something for consideration and to think about as well.
Have we done any work on working with our state legislators to point out the difficulties that school districts, especially us, have in doing this kind of necessary repair and maintenance? So I guess what I'm saying is if we go with just building a high school, can we at the same time be involved legislatively to change how the state government is funding this sort of thing, or other ways to get at money to do that? That's my question. I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but when we get into that, I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always at the forefront of all of our minds. I mean, we're not the only district in the state of Oregon with aging facilities and multiple issues with replacement and or repairs of buildings. So in that, I know we're not alone. In conversations with other superintendents, it's issues. And so, yeah, we are consistent at the level. That said, you know, we continue to apply for as many grants as we can. You know, the seismic grants, we got another one, and we're just starting the work at Chenoweth. And we'll continue to apply for those. And we will continue to apply for energy grants, and any and all, you know, funding and grants that are out there that we can apply for that are specific to improvements and repairs of school facilities, we will apply for.
I have a question. I'm curious. Does the school district have like a preventative maintenance plan that is shared with like the board, so that we know what we have going on, what needs repair, things like that? Because, you know, some of these items listed on Kara's outline, I'm surprised that they've gone on this long and that they hadn't been addressed, you know, in prior years with the ages of some of our schools. So I was just, you know, thinking down the road, with all this money needed to get our schools in place for our kids to have better opportunities, I think we need to think about also having some kind of ongoing maintenance plan that everybody's aware of, who's ever on the board, whoever the superintendent is, that we know what these things are coming up. Because, you know, it's just like owning a home. You know, after so many years, you have to get this replaced. You know, after so many years, you're going to have to get your roof replaced. It feels like to me that maybe in the past, these things weren't really addressed because everything else was going so smoothly. And now at the end of 50 plus years, you know, everything's come to a head. And I would like to propose that if and whatever direction we go, that we also look at building some kind of, you know, very detailed of what each school has going on or what's not working right, so that we're aware of these things and that we can plan on these things rather than after, you know, pardon my French, shit has hit the fan.
So part of that, Dana, is the long range facilities plan, which was completed pre-me, so I think 4 years ago. Right. So in that would have been identified kind of all the different projects and whatnot. When I came on board, I worked with the board to establish a capital improvement fund, earmarking that we have a set aside every year going into that fund specifically for bigger projects that we need to complete, in addition to the Google tax dollars that we're getting, which are also going directly into the capital improvement fund. Part of the sticky point is the cost of some of these things, right? So yeah, a new roof on a building isn't going to be covered by the current, you know, dollars that we're getting, for example. That's not going to, it's not going to pay for a roof. We would have to probably save over 5 or 6 years before we got to the point that we had enough to just replace one roof on a school.
True.
So well,
yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, so let's just pretend that we get this maintenance bond and we replace 3 out of however many roofs, right? So going forward, we need to know that in 15 years, we
Mhm.
need to start looking at these schools again. I mean, it's not going to be us. I don't expect us all to be here 15 years. Maybe John, I don't know. But
Please.
but I'm thinking, you know, I would think we would want to leave some kind of legacy saying that we have done our due diligence to say, we know that these roofs were fixed. We know in 10 years we had a leak and this is what we did. And then we have 4 more schools coming up that we have to figure out how we're going to get these roofs done so that we're not hitting all these things all at once as things fall apart. And the, you know, like in the, I don't, each maintenance person, I'm not sure how they do their job every day as far as who do they report to when a pipe breaks. Okay, if this pipe breaks, well, what about these other 3? Are we just fixing as it happens rather than looking down, being active? That's all I'm trying to say is I want us to get through this bond stuff, but I also want people to realize that just because we get a bond to do whatever we end up doing, it's not going to change that there's a whole bunch of other schools right behind us that are falling apart,
Mhm.
and all we're doing is putting band-aids on them.
Mhm. Yeah,
And I
all
think,
of your, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, and I think because a lot of the things that came from the community, the people always seem to think we're not doing anything, and by being more proactive and more apparent in the community that we say, hey, Mr. Home Depot, we need some new siding, or we need some whatchamacallits for a couple of our schools. They see that we're diligently staying on top of things so that all of a sudden we're not finding out that all our schools are, you know, we're going to have to set tents up for these kids. You know, I mean, I'm just trying to think long term, because even in normal business, you don't wait until something breaks before you fix it. You're always constantly looking. You're always replacing your copiers. Somebody's calculator isn't working right. I mean, there's all this stuff that's always moving, and there needs to be kind of an inventory of what's going on and that we're aware of, rather than getting the email from Kara saying that, you know, she's walked through and all this stuff has come out. I mean, these kind of things should be reported every month.
Mhm.
And we need to track these things so that we know what's going on in our schools. Because kind of, I got the feeling that a lot of these people thought we didn't know what was going on in the schools, you know, and I don't think that's true, but that's some of the feedback I felt from people. So, sorry, I didn't mean to be so pissy.
No, those are all really valid points. And you know, our long range facilities plan is expiring. We're going to be entering in a phase of doing a brand new one. We just applied for the TAP assistance grants to assist us with that process. And that process is about a year to year and a half process where you go through and you're going through every single school kind of with a fine-tooth comb and identifying all the things, right? And we do have the current one that would list all those projects, and I'm happy to get that out to all of you. And we could also, if it's the will of the board, you know, add at every board agenda, just like a facilities update, where you get an update on just the different projects and things that are happening and what we are working on. We're happy to bring that to the.
Well,
to the
I think I think that's a good idea, because those people that watch the board and read the board minutes, then there's one more thing they can't say that we're not talking about or we're not aware of.
And for a little bit of context, Dana, I mean, that's a lot of the work that we've done as a board since we kind of came on and around that 2019 timeframe.
Okay.
You know, the establishing of the fund, there hasn't been that mentality of what you said, but that's kind of the direction we're trying to head by establishing dedicated funds, making use of the enterprise zone, and really trying to, you know, figure a way to make this much more sustainable than it has been. I think in part is just the underfunding that the state of Oregon is historically had with education, right? You know,
Yeah.
there's been such a scarcity mindset that, you know, leadership in the past has focused and prioritized kids as rightfully they should be prioritized, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
And it leads to this type of scenario, right? Where now we're at a crux, and like you have a plethora of issues that if you would have been chipping away at them over the years, it wouldn't be such a large kind of item as it is right now. So
Oh, no, and I agree. I'm not trying to point fingers. I mean, in a perfect world, the very first board should have thought about some of these things, but you only know what you know, right?
yeah,
And over time, we run into these obstacles, and I'm still fairly new to the board, and I come from a business end of things, so I kind of look at things a little differently, and it's just how my mind works. But no, I'm just trying to throw things out there because I just think everything that we do, we need to have a way of saying how we're going to sustain it going forward. And I think a lot of that, even in how we decide to do this next bond or maintenance bond or whatever, that maybe some of that language needs to be in there so that people know it's not a one and done kind of thing.
yeah, and under Kara, the other thing that she has done is create the facilities work group, to once again involve more community members, to get kind of more people involved, and also just kind of put some time and energy into kind of thinking and working through the prioritization of just the needs across the district. So,
right.
I mean, again, and that is something that had not existed before in the district. So, there's a lot of, I think, positive momentum that we have in various facets, from not only fiscal side, but now groups to actually dedicate some time and energy to this as well.
And we also are working so we have been working on our kind of our under the business but maintenance side web page to have a more public log of the projects we are working on, visible to the public. So that's in progress. Stephanie's been working the back end of that. Given the age of our facilities, we often are in triage mode, where we are having to triage when a pipe bursts. We're having to triage, when a roof leaks. Like that's just where we're at.
Yeah.
So
I might say that we've been there for as long as I've been on the board, and probably way before. And you can't help some of those things, even if you have a plan. There are always surprises. But I really like what Dana's saying and what you just said, Carolyn, because I think we need to be more out front so the community can see on our district website, these are the things that we have to address. And it's out there. And there's discussion around that, and that it's more transparent. This is the amount of money that's going to take to do this, and we're always trying to chip away at this, but this is what we have ahead of us, and keep going with that plan. So it's right out front. I think we should do that.
So, Judy, I don't know if I'll switch over to Judy, and if she wants to kind of just refresh everyone's minds about the community feedback we got at the kind of post-bond work session we had back in November.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to. The full deck was sent out to the board previously. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will remind us from that community debriefing session, some of the suggestions from the attendees. Can you hear me okay and see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
So the ideas that participants had were to explore untapped potential of existing Watonka, list the district properties, collaborate with the county, have town halls. We saw that in Dr. Bernal's presentation. Thank you. Divide up the work. We asked how would the community like us to take action. They talked about making sure that if we had any extra land just hanging around, that'll follow from a list of the properties that we have, then to sell those, to build on current momentum coming out of the failed bond measure, repeat the polling, listen to and understand what the community is saying, reduce the cost, seek new grant funding. And then there was some suggestions about specific potential House measures, return the voters on a ballot in May, and expand the scope of the polling. When we asked what are the next steps, This was towards the end of the listening session, but it seemed to consolidate around 3 areas about telling the story. We discussed already not receiving the awesome grant for this round, and the implications for that. So I think telling that story as well is still important when it's going away that our facilities report will expire. We've telling the story includes we've heard from the community, we're seeking their feedback and we can pivot, and what a lower cost would get you. And part of that story is that the cost will only increase. Folks reminded us that the community has a long memory, and people relate to schools, that leadership needs to tell the story and we need to keep it simple. There were suggestions about expanding the channels for engagement in the community, including seniors and parents, multi-time, multi-venue. So that speaks to the suggestions that we saw Dr. Bernal have with the town hall ideas. So that was just a refresh. We did start out with what went well and what could be done better. So depending on what the board's direction is, we can go back and revisit those. Like I said, nothing, there's no new content there. That was just a reminder from our discussion in December, November.
Seems like a long time ago, doesn't
Last year.
it?
Sorry.
I did see something in the paper today that caught my attention at the city level, and the historic committee, I can't remember what they call their name, but there was an article in the paper about the city would like to assure that the Colonel Wright and the Dallas High School are considered historic buildings, and so that their use would be preserved as that for different uses if the school abandoned those sites. So that was kind of caught my attention. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but that was at the city level.
So I think at this point I prepared a Jamboard just to capture discussion. Either Chair Jones or Dr. Bernal, feel free to lead us, but everyone should have a link. I'd be happy to give a little tutorial. If you haven't used Jamboard before, it's a virtual whiteboard. You should have a link. Go ahead and get into the Jamboard if you can. I can also share screen so we can see folks coming in. Looks like this. If you haven't used Jamboard before, the icons here on the left on your menu can give you options to put content into the board. And this one that's 1, 2, 3, 4 down is a sticky note. If you hover over it, it says sticky note. You can click on that and type a comment into the sticky note. I think just to keep it organized, put your initials at the end, and then you can put the sticky note on the board. I didn't know how this discussion was going to go, so I just put up like pros of considering approaching the May election, or cons against putting a bond on the May ballot, other discussion. So maybe there's a pro or a con related to a different version of this ask. Maybe there are really strong feelings about or concerns about either one. Feel free to populate other discussion and we could put up a new board if there's other content. This is not intended to push you into a binary box.
So I don't understand how you, I mean, if I move my cursor in all the places you had yours, mine does nothing. So how do you activate that?
Judy, when I click on the link, mine's view only. So I don't have the icons on the left.
Oh, okay, let me see. Let me work on sharing a link where you can contribute. Hold on.
Can you drop the link in the chat?
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
If you're already in there, you'll need to hit refresh to get an updated share status from Judy.
Try that.
Oh, yeah, there it is. So if we bring that up, things will work for us. Is that what you're saying?
Give that a try, John. Yeah.
Oh,
So as I'm sharing screen, just be mindful that on the webinar, any public viewing the content can see that content that you write as well.
well, mine still doesn't do anything. Oh, I have no idea. Oh, what's this up here?
Can anyone else put content in the board on that link?
No, it wants me to download it.
I can't.
Bernal can. I'm also happy to record if there's something that comes to mind and you want to just let me know where it goes.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that one there. Short timeline.
Joel, can you get in?
No, I don't understand how to do it. I don't know what to do. I have never been able to do this.
John, I can help you if you have thoughts in support of or considerations against a May bond or other decisions. You can. I'm happy to stick a note for you.
Okay, good. Do it that way.
Got it.
I think one of the pros I'd like to put on there, Judy, is
Yes.
that when we had that town hall, I mean, the major thing that people said is they're in support of putting right away a bond up for just the high school.
As a pro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. The other thing I like to say is I think that we could have both things going on, a bond issue for a new high school and this plan for fixing all the things that we need to maintain and putting that out front. We can do both of those at the same time. And as we get grants and money, we just tick away at it. We don't put a timeline on that. It goes under other discussion.
Okay. Adrian, same thing. If there's a thought that you have and you want me to put it on the board, I'm happy to put your content.
Okay, yeah, because I was having to download it, the
Yeah.
application.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's really good that most of what I heard, I didn't really hear anybody deny that we were in need of a high school. I think it was just more of the money wise. So everyone's pretty much acknowledges the need for a high school. So that's good.
I can help anybody too who can't access the Post-its. If you have a thought and you want me to type it for you, I can.
Dana, were you able to put a thought in there? Do you have something you want me to stick on?
No, I actually pretty much what's up there is, so this is just talking about doing the bond for building the school. It's not that maintenance bond, correct? Are we talking?
We
two
can put
different-
that on there under the other discussion. This was just a way for us to
Yeah.
capture what everyone was saying. So if you want me to put a comment under other discussion about a bond, yes, but a maintenance bond, I can certainly do
Yes, that'd be great. Yeah. Hey, Jose, see, can you answer this question for me? Because I remember that some of those parents were very adamant about like not tearing down Watauga, but adding on to it. And my question about that is, if that was the way we wanted to go, and then they find out when they're in there ripping down parts of the school, and they realize it's totally trash, and actually a new school needs to be built, where does that leave us? How does that work? Or are we just, we can't finish using the bond? I wasn't sure.
I mean, if you, in that hypothetical, I mean, you would incur additional cost to fix whatever deficiency or whatever you find. It's like if you're doing something at home, right? If you're doing, say, like a bathroom remodel and you find that the floor is not, what it should be, it's not structurally sound or whatever, then you address it, right? It'd be similar, just on a larger commercial scale.
Larger scale.
Yeah. And it would just be something that you'd have to absorb within
That
contingency costs or whatnot that's within the budget. So
and when they're say the bond passed and we do a remodel or add-on or whatever they were talking about, and then they find out, oh, this is a nightmare, we need to start from beginning to end, and it goes over, it goes back up to that 140 million. I mean, what happens? Do we just have half a school? I mean, that's what, in my mind, all those people kept saying, oh, we can just remodel the old Watauga. But does somebody go in and make sure that actually can happen before it's even started? That was one of the things I didn't really get clear answer on, because I even asked that architect guy and he just kind of stared at me.
yeah, I mean, you'd want to do some due diligence for sure.
Okay.
But there's without doing, say, like destructive demolition, opening up walls or stuff like that, a lot of it's going to be visual, and
Right.
the thing with renovation, just like anyone that's done something in their own house, you're bound to run into some surprises, and that's why you build in budgets with contingencies and whatnot to absorb the variances that
Could happen.
happen, and that's just reality, right? Sometimes you're gonna find something, or sometimes you may be pleasantly surprised, like maybe something you don't have to touch, and you have a savings, right? So it goes in both directions.
Okay.
Joel, did you have any thoughts?
I put one there under the other. I remember on slide 3 on the slide deck, talking about eliminating specific projects. I think in our community, that CTE portion is going to be really crucial for a lot of kids who are not college bound. And I don't think that that should be on the table as far as something that gets cut from the bond number. I think we really need a really robust program there, and whether that's in greater partnership with the college or just a really strong program at our high school self-contained, that's going to be really important for a lot of our kids. And kind of on the note that Dana and Jose were just discussing, remember the consultants they talked about, they did a good job of not letting us hold them to a number, but they said, they estimated perhaps a 10 to 15% cost reduction of renovation versus brand new construction. But given the time length of a project like that, we're having to relocate kids and then go back and remodel existing facilities.
Mhm.
They end up eating that 10 to 15% anyway.
Yep.
One question I didn't see on the slide deck for specific projects that could be eliminated. We haven't talked about the potential to take sports and sports facilities out of that and then pursue alternative funding for new stadium, new track, new practice facilities. It would be nice to have the things that we had talked about originally, but if there's sources of other funding for those items, honestly, I don't care if there's corporate billboards all over a football stadium, as long as it's beautiful and incredible for our kids, right?
Yep. Very true.
Okay. Are we saying if we go for a bond to support a new high school and we don't do anything on that bond about Watonka, what are we saying? That Watonka stays as it is and we can use it like we are, and the new high school goes on the site somewhere, but that sort of eliminates the the ability for fields and so forth. So is that what we're saying when we say that? I don't know, Jose, what do you think about that? In other words, if we just go for a bond and it goes somewhere on that site, we're not talking about Watonka. Where does that leave us?
It leaves you with less athletic field space is a reality.
Yeah, right, that's the reality. Yeah. And we could
there's no ability to displace it somewhere else.
Right.
On that site anyways.
And that would just be, whatever we go for now, that doesn't say that we can't have a future plan to, in our minds about taking Watonka down on some other occasion and, putting in those fields, etc. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Jose, leaning on your experience, not sure where my head's going. Taking into account like what you're seeing as far as costs, either leveling off or having a downward-ish trend. I mean, maybe this is a hard question for you to answer. What's a number that's realistic for us to get to, or in your experience, what are things that are realistic for us to eliminate from the number and take back out to voters? I'm not trying to pin you on anything here, obviously.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of the brainstorming stuff has already been said, right? Is that you eliminate certain aspects of that, like Watonka, right? You eliminate athletics, you reduce the overall square footage, it's all those things. Those are real dollars that, to do those things, you have to spend the money. If you don't do them, you don't spend the money, right? So, I mean, there's probably a whole host of things that, you know, can be thought of and dwindle it down. I think the only thing I would caution is that if you skinny it up too much, would we be, you know, the same story like many have in terms of their feelings towards the pool in town, right? Where the community had the opportunity to have a pool that was covered and used or a bit able to be used year round, and then now it's not, right? You know, and I'm sure there was a lot of you know, things that informed that decision at that time. I'm not trying to be critical of that. That's just a real life scenario that is relatively in our recent past of like hard decisions were having to be made, and the ramifications of that is that we don't have, say, in that instance, a pool that can be utilized year round, right? And so for us, you know, the reality is similar to what John just said, right? If you say you don't do a demolition of Watonka and we keep it in active use, we're physically losing green space on that campus, right? And that's just something that is a consequence of the work. In my mind, I consider it kind of an unintended consequence, right? You're getting something great in terms of educational facilities for students, but you're reducing the overall green space that's available for athletics or just outdoor play in general. So they're trade-offs.
And going back to the pool, what I remember is the bond wouldn't pass with the construction of a roof over the over the pool, and it did pass when you took that away. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
It was money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the CTE were to stay on the bond and nothing was done to Watonka, would it be a possibility to have those programs there at the Watonka building?
I don't think so. Not without any significant reparations to that building.
Mm-hmm.
It would depend. Yeah, not in its current state. No. I don't know if you agree with that, Jose, but I mean, if you look at Watonka and its current, it's not doesn't have the space and or it's not designed for currently to have CTE classes there.
Right, the addition of the high school in the 60s and 70s, that included that shop space, and Watonka doesn't have anything like that.
Maybe it would take a little bit more of a renovation effort. I mean, and typically what that means is that you end up eating up more square footage or more space, and so you reduce other areas, right, to create. Because typically, you know, you have typical classrooms are going to be like 900, 1,000 square feet, and then those are going to be more like 1,400 square feet or larger. And so if you start, say, changing things into CTE, then you reduce other instructional spaces, and you're kind of chasing spatial constraints or not constraints, but spatial needs.
Don't forget, we do have the ability to collaborate with the college and use their skill center. So we could put more effort into making a different collaborative effort and utilize that space.
And we do currently.
Yeah.
We are currently collaborating with them. Our welding programs up there. We are utilizing their new spaces. So we could further explore that.
Yeah.
Knowing that we are second in the waiting list for the Awesome Grant, I think it would be wise to get to a number that we think the community will be supportive of, knowing, and just count on not having that 6 mil coming in. And then if by some reason all those shoes drop that Jose's talking about, then that's a bonus. And then maybe we do look at, applying that to sports, things that couldn't make the list, but I think we need to be wise about getting it to an appropriate number, just counting that we're not going to have that available to us.
Yeah.
I want to make a point about CGCC for CTE, which I think is great. It's a beautiful facility. There are some challenges to that. I mean, we bus kids up there. That syncing up the day is difficult for high school students, because their periods are different. And so it's not super seamless. It seems like a great collaboration, and it is, but there are challenges to that.
Right.
And it makes me concerned about equity too, making sure that all the kids have all that equal access to that opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah, amplified a bit, Judy, if we're talking about moving a campus to the west side of town then as well.
Good thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Jose, on the November bond, square footage per student, is there a range? Is this like a state number that we're given? And where were we within that range?
I don't know those, but ODE does have a published in terms of like how much square foot per kiddo. And then you use that to inform the overall design of the building, coupled with just the programs you have. So there is some kind of calculation that you do. And I don't know them off the top of my head.
Fine. Thank you.
So one of my areas of concern is if we do this bond for May, it'll be a single item again listed to vote on. There's nothing else with it
Do you mean on the ballot, Dana?
on the ballot. Yeah.
There's a lot of
No,
stuff on the
There'll
ballot.
be a lot on the ballot.
Okay. There's a lot on the mail.
It's-
Good, because
The primary.
Primary,
okay.
You probably get more participation.
Yeah, we would not be the only thing on the ballot this time.
Okay.
One of
That's
many.
that was my concern, was because there was just us, or this, the bond, not us, but the bond. But I mean, my other concern is, I mean, it's almost the end of January. I mean, do we really think we can get this all together to put on the bond by May, especially when we don't even have a PAC in place that's willing to come up with $10,000 and run with this again? I mean, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I know, I mean, the last one, there was a lot of time built behind it. And I mean, I don't know. It seems like, are we just doing this because of all the comments, or should we be more thoughtful and maybe wait till later in the year and really get a strong data and everything and input before we roll it out? I just don't think it's enough time personally, but once again, it's just me. I just feel that if it's rushed, we may get the same results.
And that was one of the points I put under other discussion.
Oh, was
Dana,
it? Okay.
Like, is it better for us to wait for the updated long range facility plan to go through the process again? That will clearly re-identify the needs of all of our buildings.
Yeah.
It does if we forego May, then we probably aren't looking at anything till, I would say the soonest would be fall 2025.
Oh, it wouldn't be able to do it this
Next
year?
opportunity. No,
Oh.
because our long range
No.
facility plan is expiring.
Oh, I see. what
It's
you're saying.
expired.
It's
Basically,
expired as of
we could
12/31.
still, we
Oh,
could
so
use
this
it
is the
for May.
extension. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, got it.
If
Got
we
it.
went for May, we could still use the existing one.
Yeah, I see.
But if we forego May, then we have to go through the process. And as I
All
said,
over.
it's a year to a year and a half process. And so
Oh.
the soonest I think we could go back out would be fall of 2025.
And that would even be doing a maintenance bond rather than the
Any
bond.
bond.
Okay.
Anything we decide to do, yeah, we would need to.
Well, the qualification on that, Dana, is the eligibility of the awesome grant, the additional $6 million.
Okay.
So we would be able to do a bond ahead of that. However, we would not have the ability to say nor apply for the awesome grant.
Right.
So
Right.
if we say another hypothetical could be if we say no to this May, we could spend the rest of 2024 working on trying to develop something that resonates more with the community and say, just again, hypothetically, say we do November of 24.
Mhm.
We can do that. However, we won't have completed the requirements to be eligible for the awesome grant.
Right.
And so you lose on kind of the ability to add $6 million to your bond program.
Right. But that's not a given either. I mean, it's depends where
Again,
we
as we
Yeah.
saw here, in this application for it, yeah, it's not guaranteed depending on the quantity of other districts throughout the state that also apply, because it is a limited bucket of money that the
Sure.
legislator has allocated. So it's dependent upon who, is thinking the same as we are in terms of trying to do some improvements to their district facilities.
Right. Okay.
In most communities, and I would be of the same opinion, is that, if there's money available out there, we should be getting it to lessen the burden on the taxpayer, right?
Oh yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
But you don't, in theory, don't have to, but it's
Yeah.
in my mind, it's kind of like, why wouldn't you, right? But
Right.
in our instance, it just pushes out our ability to be able to put something back on the ballot.
True.
On the school districts that are ahead of us on the awesome grant, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Do we know anything about their electorate and their past ability to pass a bond? I mean, could we find that out? Because that would be useful. If they have as much trouble as we're having, we have maybe a shot that their thing would fail, and we would be more assured of taking that spot. I guess that's what I'm thinking. Is there a way to look into that a little bit more?
Are you raising your hand, John?
No, I wouldn't even know how to go about doing that.
I'm
sure-
hear
I'm-
it.
Thanks,
I'm sure. I'm sure there is. I mean, you'd have to put in some effort to kind of comb through election data and other stuff. I mean, that's
okay.
an effort in and of itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share the list with you of everyone who's ahead of us. Start digging into that.
So, well, then that brings up another question. How many other school districts that have failed a bond passing and then within 6 months put in another bond, did they pass or not? Does anybody know? Has it ever happened before?
I don't know if anyone keeps that data, honestly.
Oh, I just wondered. Yeah, I mean,
So let's see. I just pulled up the list. So the schools that have commitments from ODE on the grant are Ukiah, Coquille, Gervais, Oakland, Klamath Falls City Schools, Sutherland School District, Willamina, and Eagle Point. So
I thought Klamath Falls already got something. Why doesn't somebody have a sugar daddy and they just give us some money? No? Sorry.
If I would have hit, that $1 billion lottery, I would have just
I know, same here.
paid for the school.
Carolyn, have you had any conversation with any of your contemporaries over the last year or so? Anybody that has successfully navigated a bond effort and what did work well for them? Or, talking with, I know 2 or 3 went down in November, similar to ours. Have you had discussions with any of your counterparts and asked them what their plans are or what they learned from that process?
No, I know that the ones that failed this last go around, I know in 2 of those bond elections, they actually had, both those districts had like an active no campaign. So they had an active opposition campaign, like out there actively opposing, like some crazy stuff, like driving up and down the street with megaphones and telling people, like vote no. And yeah, it got pretty
Ugly.
pretty crazy in a couple districts in talking with them, which was interesting. And we didn't have an active, opposing out there, driving up and down and stuff. So yeah.
I'm looking at our jam board here, and I'm not seeing as many stacked in the pros, and I know that's probably discouraging. But
Well, other can go either way.
a lot of good other discussion. I know a hasty decision is never one that's made well, but 2025 seems like a long ways away, and I know the building has stood for close to 60 years plus. But man, I just feel like 2025 seems like a long ways away. And I know it would be another punch in the gut if we go May and it doesn't pass. But on the flip side of that, the alternative of doing something of like a smaller scale maintenance bond that Kara suggested, I just get a sense if we were to like flip right now and go with a smaller scale bond in May, that maybe there's this feeling amongst the community that the district is just trying to get our money for anything. If we say, yeah, November was a new high school, that didn't work, so now we're asking for this. Somebody mentioned, and maybe it came up at the November meeting, that our community has a long memory, and kind of to Dana's point a bit, that I think that question's going to come up as relates to a smaller scale bond of like, why can't the district pay for this? Where has the financial oversight been for years? And I know Jose kind of spoke to that there was a kid focus for a long time and not some forward looking, but I think that to me, flipping right now and going to a smaller scale bond in May is pretty bad optics. I don't know, it's not all about optics, but I don't think that would sit well.
I agree with you, and I think that right now, we have the momentum, and if we act in the sense of, okay, we're going to take an action, we're going to eliminate all kinds of things, reduce them. Because they're asking us to build a high school and make it cheaper. That's what they're saying. And so we would be that's what we're addressing. And we're coming back to do that. We hear you, and this is what we're doing to get a high school. I mean, to me, we have momentum for that. And you're right about the small scale thing. It's just, okay, well, we have all of these needs. Let's ask the community for a bond for that. It's a totally different thing. We'd have to build a momentum for that, and that would not be pretty. So, for all the reasons that you said. So I think it would be, frankly, if we're going to do anything, be easier to go with the momentum we have and basically just address the criticism directly. That's my
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if we do May, it has to be a pivot that
Yep.
isn't so big from what the original ask was. So we would have to do something high school focused, be it, a renovation of Watonka and expansion or just a reduction in overall scope. But if we go something greater or move away from that, then I think it warrants more discussion and more community input at the end of the day, So
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, John brings up a good point. May is tight, but it does communicate that we thought this was a good plan. We've heard you that it was not, and we would like to address those issues. It seems, with the town halls and with the opportunities to go speak to the community, it seems more collaborative to say, we as your board have heard you. Here's how we're working to address those issues and working hard to get a new high school.
And I remember when we were doing the the pool bond, that's exactly what happened. They came back and said, well, we can eliminate this and get it down. And that's what they did. They addressed that right away. And so the next time they went for it, they got the pool. Of course, they had the added incentive of the fact that they had totally closed the pool and nobody could swim for one of the hottest summers on record. So they had something going for them there. But anyway.
So we will need to pivot pretty quickly if we are going to think about moving forward. And we need to have something on the agenda for January of whether we're moving forward or not. So we don't have an action item for this. This is just a work session. And I think there's a lot to think about. And so, I would ask that, Chair Jones and Vice Chair Richardson have some individual conversations with each of you to further think about what direction you might want to go in order to inform whether we want to put something up for a vote on the January agenda or not.
Is there any I guess going back to the realistic price that Joel was asking, I mean, can we build a high school for 91 or 92 million? I mean, can we do that? Can we bring it down that far? Is that a possibility?
I don't just in simple terms, no, because it would be a small, because at the end of the day, you're paying for square footage. So, outside of cutting, things like was already mentioned earlier, the demo Watonka, the athletic fields, you're really looking at cutting the size of a school. And we were already trying to make it a facility that was going to be living into the future for decades to come. And so if we start making it smaller, then we run into capacity issues and have a potential need down the road, much quicker than one would hope in terms of, getting modulars or whatever on a site that just got built.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see that, since every other property already has modulars in response to enrollment capacities.
Well, from your experience, how much can we shave that number down, you think? To what kind
I'd
of?
have to put more thought to it.
100% agree with Jose on that. Yeah, we need a new school as quickly as possible, but it also needs to be a school for the next 25 to 30 years,
Mhm.
accounting for any possible growth. Yeah, and the idea of having, modulars right next to a brand new building in the next 5 years is
Not good.
not good.
Mm.
I think there are some things in the period right now, in terms of our economy, that labor prices and things like that are going down. I can't remember what was said, but there is a savings by acting now in terms of our economy, I think. Correct me if anybody thinks I'm totally off base here.
Interest rates are going down.
Yeah, interest rates are
that's-
adjusting,
Yeah,
but they're always variable.
yeah.
Looking at this board, are there any questions, pieces of information, something you wish you knew, or other important element in this discussion for the work session that will help you form a position on this issue?
Question.
The information that we gleaned from the thought exchange, just kind of a summary of that and see what percolated based on the comments that we received.
Mhm.
Stephanie and I can work on kind of there were a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But we can work to kind of synchronize it.
Yeah,
and
just if
put
there's
it-
any like consistent themes or large kind of buckets of information that were similar,
Mhm. Yep.
would be super helpful. I mean, if they're all over the place, maybe it isn't so helpful.
No,
in
there
terms of
there
information.
were definitely some themes,
Okay.
for sure. So Stephanie and I can work on that tomorrow in the morning and try to sync up that and come up with the themes and push that out to y'all.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's a great point, Jose. It doesn't make sense to be working on C and D if A and B are the issues that need to be addressed, given our timeline.
And if I may, think also about the implications of your position. So if the board chose to go again in May, the recommendation is to have volunteers who can do town halls, visioning sessions. There's going to need to be work around city engagement and support for district resources. So there's that. I'm not saying that to sway you, just think the next step. If the board feels no, May is not the right time, we should think about how we honor all this work that we've done and the community has done to tell the story of, well, why not? Or what is it that, we're thinking, and what are you going to do about maintenance and the issues that Cara brought up? And one thing that I haven't brought up, and I don't know how to properly articulate it, but I know all of you guys think about this too, besides the need of like warmth and sufficient space for learning, and John mentioned it too, that the community has brought to our attention safety. And every time we hear the news, when there's something horrible that happens at another school, I stop and think and check that it wasn't ours. And God forbid something bad happens to our school. The longer we delay making our school the safest possible place for families to reconnect after something that bad happens, or protecting our students and our teachers and our staff and keeping them safe, is one more day that, this is not, you guys know how serious this is. This is not a game we're playing. We need to get this school replaced for safety reasons.
There's one more thought I have is that if we go for it now, it's this board that's going for it. In a future one, your board is going to change probably. And you won't have the same people involved, and that is a whole new dynamic. So, you lose the ability we have with our experience now on this issue and the momentum we built. We're the ones who are owning that right now in terms of the board. And so it's to our advantage if we're responding directly to the community now that we do it now. Board makeup is an important thought.
I understand the point, but I mean, I would argue, I guess, that at the end of the day, if we create something that resonates with the community, it doesn't matter who's at the table for the board. If it's going to resonate with the community, it's going to resonate no matter the makeup of the board. And I think that at least has been my mentality, is that it doesn't matter who sits at the table. Yes, we ultimately have the deciding votes, but our main task should be something that resonates with the community. We got close this last go around, but I think we can make improvements to that. You eliminate that as a variable in my mind, John. Like, if it really resonates with the community and they're going to be behind us, then the makeup is less important.
Perhaps.
And then to kind of add to your thought, Judy, the other thing, just kind of with this winter that we've been experiencing as of late, resiliency is kind of the other thought that I had in terms of like redundant, power and other things, so that, similar to what, folks west of us in Portland have experienced in terms of, power and other utilities being lost. Like, some have actually turned to schools in terms of a refuge and, going, seeking warmth and shelter in this type of environment. That would be another cool, community benefit in terms of, like, if we have improvements either to existing facilities or new facility, having resiliency, things like backup generators and stuff that, you can fire up and you're still operational to house, say, community that's in need or whatever. I mean, that is another facet that's been on my mind, just kind of with the cold weather and storms that we've been having.
Great point, Jose.
However, wasn't there something that came up when we talked about that last time, that adding that as something that we do within our schools would shoot our liability up in the cost of our insurance greatly?
Are you talking about if we use our buildings for things like warming shelters and things like that?
Yes.
Not necessarily. I mean, we currently utilize our buildings, for example, when there's fires, for evacuation centers.
Yeah.
So,
It's
when
not
people
the
have to
same
be
thing as-
evacuated, we open them to families and whoever's been evacuated.
Yeah.
We are often a Red Cross shelter. So,
Okay. That happens now. Okay. I do remember that. We had other things where Red Cross did that in our schools.
At the last OSBA meetings, Dana and I have sat with the representatives, the superintendent and school board members from Phoenix Talent, not from Talent, from Talent, where overnight, over Labor Day weekend, their school became housing for their school population, right?
Yep.
And the superintendent became like an emergency responder triage person, and they literally like all moved to the school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
fire.
Yep.
Now, if a new school was to be built, would the design lend itself to any type of additions, like an addition added to it? You guys know if that's something that's been thought about?
It's a great question. I think it's going to depend on the design and the square footage and how much
land is left?
land is left or how much space it takes up, right?
Yeah.
Because remember, the current location of where we were thinking about the high school also houses a lot of our practice and play fields.
And that's one thing the old Watauga School did have, is the ability to expand all that land. So, yeah.
Dave, you haven't said anything.
Just listening. So, we'll have to make, the agenda has to be turned in by what, Monday, Tuesday?
We try to get it out to y'all Friday.
Okay. So we got a few days, 2 days to think.
That's for consideration for the January. I mean, you could always also call a special board meeting.
When is our January?
Between the January and February. January 25th is our next board meeting.
Oh, okay.
Carolyn, do you know when we'll start seeing, I don't know if significance is the right word, but enterprise zone funds that will actually potentially make a difference for school maintenance, school upkeep?
So we currently are in the first round of the enterprise dollars. We get approximately about 250,000. The next one, I believe, comes on the tax rolls next year, I believe, of which would yield an additional approximately 450,000. It's next year or the following year. I don't recall off the top of my head.
About 700,000.
So I'll ask you again, any other questions or data or information you need? What are we not seeing that's coming to mind? Dana asked about the other things on the ballot. I think it's just going to be different, right? I mean, the political background noise is just going to be higher because there's so many other things going on this year politically. So, telling our story is going to be perhaps more challenging. Volunteers who are maybe politically active for whatever issue are going to be doubly taxed, right? Because we know there's a small group of people who are active in lots of different things. And so they're going to be door knocking for such and such a candidate and this or that issue. And like asking them to put the information out again, it may be a bit more of a challenge.
Well, we don't need perhaps as much community building because we built that. And if we're addressing only the criticism and we can define it that way, we don't really need to put, I don't think that, I mean, and then we continue our town hall meetings. I mean, that kind of might take care of it. And we wouldn't really have to build the same kind of structure that we had last time.
You're leveraging on the community's long memory.
Exactly. That's what I'm leveraging on. And that will go away for sure after this next vote. I mean, it is already slipping a bit, but I mean, I think it's still there, especially if we're on the ballot, it'll come back fast. Well, this is really a good discussion to me. I think it's good. We got a lot on there. I'm just wondering if there's anything we're all missing. Don't know.
Stephanie and I will work on that thought exchange stuff in the morning and get it out to you today, tomorrow, for further just information, additional things to consider. Dave, Judy, you can do some individual follow-up, and discussion. And we'll figure out next steps. Is there any other information any of you want or need as you consider how we move forward that we've not already talked about?
The only other thought I had, and time is going to be working against us in this, is it similar to, this discussion, which was great. I'd be curious to kind of hear from the group that came and met with all of us. Gosh, what month was it's all running?
November.
Was that November?
Yeah.
November.
As similar to us, right? As you've had time to kind of think, kind of take in everything that's been said, and thought about it more, like I'd be curious kind of where folks are at, or just how they're feeling, how they're thinking. But I don't know that we have the time to do that. But it would be nice to kind of hear from that group again, because, they did provide a lot of great feedback.
One thing
Could
I'm
we-
curious. Sorry, go ahead.
Could we have another community meeting and invite them back specifically, and anybody else who wants to come and actually present them with our thoughts, like tonight's thoughts, and get just a further consideration from a group of citizens? I mean, could that be a next part of a next step?
You could, yeah. And that's an option.
So could the board make a decision to present a bond on the ballot in February?
I was just trying to Google the filing dates. I haven't looked them up. But that's kind of the other consideration. And they come at you much quicker than you think. We're saying May, but I mean, there's stuff, I think it's like 90 days out, which puts you April, March. So, I mean, we're talking like February.
Yeah, you'd have to move pretty quick.
Really fast.
Some of these parts. Like if you wanted to reconvene the group from November and anyone else who wants to come, like you'd have to do that fairly quick. And then you'd probably have to have, I mean, if you are going to move forward, you'd have to have something ahead of the February board meeting, like a special board meeting. Because if you wait till the February board meeting, it's going to be really
Maybe too
shortening
late.
the timeline. Yeah. I believe March 1st, we have to have our ballot language finalized and submitted.
Well, I'm kind of double thinking. Well, I'm just worried that some of those people that were so adamant about how they concocted together their numbers, and we're sharing all that information about how they calculated that if we did Wetumpka this way, it should only cost this, that we would get caught back in all that back and forth, and without really giving them any more information. And one of the things was, well, why don't we have a plan? Why are you doing it this way? We don't have those answers yet. So to me, it's like, I don't know, it's like we're just kind of going back over, like we didn't hear what they said the first time. I'm not really sure. I mean, I would, if that was me on the other end and you guys asked me to come back, I'd be like, well, why didn't they watch the video again? Or who didn't take notes? It's like, I don't know. I think it would just be, I'm not comfortable about having to sit through that again, because they were all over the place. We got good feedback, but then we got a ton of negative, and then we had some of the PAC people that were kind of condescending to each other in their own group, and then that architect guy wasn't very supportive of what was put together either. So I don't know. I'm not really sure if that's the correct way to go.
Mm.
Nobody has anything to say I'm wrong? Yay! Oh no. I just, because like you said, we're limited on time. So even if we meet with them and we do all this work, it's no guarantee that those people that are on the fence after coming to a second meeting are going to be happy with what we've come up with. I think some of those people would just continuously not agree with us just because. And like you said, there's this history that sounds like it goes back centuries. I don't know. I've only been here 3 years, so I'm not even aware of all the ins and outs. But, you're never going to change that. So I don't know.
I do see some value to what Jose's saying. If I think back to that November meeting, I don't remember there being a strong contingent of just outright detractors. I think that there were people who had just concerns, and there were probably people who were in favor of the whole idea of a new high school in their community, but just had concerns about either the number or the presentation or the information given. And that was 2 weeks after whatever it was, 2 and some change after the bond failed. And so it was pretty raw. And so I know time is the gambit. It's the wild card here, but to go back and have a discussion to say, okay, now we're 2 months out. How are you now feeling about this? Have you had a chance to digest and give it some thought, and what, as people who could potentially be in favor, given the right information and the right number, how do you feel about this now?
Right. But we're not going to have that information to give them, are we? That's what I'm saying. I have any information any more differently than what we presented in November, because we haven't sat down and looked at how we're going to reinvent this whole situation. And everything's a guesstimate. And that was one of the things they didn't like. And how low do we have to go to make them say yes, they'll vote for it? Because we could say 50 million, and then it ends up being a school smaller than the two schools we have now. So I don't know, because some of the points for the new school were really awesome, but if you can't build a school for 50 million and make everybody happy, I don't know. Unless we all pitch in and dig a wing. I don't know.
I think that figure was 90. I think that's what people were talking about.
Well, but we said between 70 and 90, but you know what though? In 6 months to a year, that $90 million is probably going to be 120, the way the economy is, who's in office, how prices go. We have no control over that. We can say we need 90, But bottom line is, by the time we get the money, that 90 million isn't going to be worth 90 million. That's just the way it is right now. And it will continue to be. We may not even get the school we want for 90 million.
I think you're right in the sense that if we have a town hall meeting, we have to come to a decision about and make certain, narrow our, what we're saying about it. So we really have to come up with something new to offer out of this. We can't just go and ask them, well, you've thought about this. Have you thought about this? And present the same. I think you're right there. It has to be, we've gelled this somewhat, and there's a change here. And what about this? I think if we go towards that idea, we have to do that first, which we might not be able to do.
Right. That's what I was saying. I mean, I don't know if we have enough time to get that kind of information to present to them.
I think there's a lot to consider. Tonight's conversation. As I said, if there's any other additional information you want as you think about this, please let me know so we can make sure we get it to you. We can get the thought exchange info to you.
One of the things, there's a little bit more clarity on, what are all those little things that are coming at us, and when, if we go for it, and what dates do we have to pay attention to? So that outline that a little bit more succinctly, and so we all know, okay, these are our target dates, and this is what's because of this. That would be good to have that information.
Okay. Yeah. We can work on that and get that to you as well.
And another thought is, I still think that if we put more information together, I think a couple people have mentioned tonight the word momentum, and trying not to lose sight of that or lose it. I think it's going to be incumbent on us to kind of make the time and invite people to come and continue the work alongside us, whether we choose may or not, right? That's in my mind, the way you kind of keep that is continue to engage and host opportunities for people to come, share their opinion and thoughts with us so that, they have that opportunity.
Good thought.
Any final closing thoughts? Turn it back to you, Chair Jones.
Great. If we don't have anything else, then we'll adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
Right.